Hello. Our subject is holistic healing, and there'll be 2 more transmissions on that subject. Belinda, you've been sending me some cat videos, some cute cat videos, just to get me started during the day. And when I saw them this morning, I thought about the role that pets play in promoting health.
Oh, I'm cat obsessed.
I love cats too.
Yeah.
But the advantages of having a pet and caring for a pet are enormous. They help to calm us down.
I sure do.
They show us unconditional love. Some pets need exercise, like dogs, so they get you out and they get you moving. They make sure you get your exercise. And they are just generally good for stress relief, because it's hard to be stressing out about things when you're patting your cat or your dog, or caring for your birds or rabbits or guinea pigs. And it really consolidates that relationship between the animal and the human, the animal kingdom and humanity. Because when we care for an animal, we are caring for our own animal nature as well.
That's right.
And that means our body, which is the basis of health. I'm not saying that the health originates there, but I'm saying that it has to be manifest there and secured there. And the pet also brings stability, because if you have a pet, you're more anchored to the home than you would be, because you have a responsibility to feed that pet and
absolutely.
toilet it and care for it and groom it. And the pet looks forward to your return and your presence in their life, especially if you've got a cat, because cats they're such home bodies.
Also, cats have a special healing ability that no other animal has, and that's in the purr.
In the purring and the vibration.
It can heal bones and all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
We hear a lot about that, the health benefits of just being with a vibrating cat. And they're a bit of a mystery, what they pick up on and what they can balance in a household. But the simplicity of just being more home-based as a pet owner keeps you stabilised in your routines, and it keeps you validating the domestic life in a world which is always pulling us out more and more because of the pressures of the global economy. And what it ends up doing is driving small and medium-sized businesses to the wall, such that over time there is a migration of people into working for corporations. And once you start working for a corporation, it can be a bit disorientating, because in a way the corporation wants you to make a kind of home there and to see your co-workers as a kind of family.
You're totally consumed.
Some people get totally consumed, and others get partially consumed, and others feel a tension and a tug of war between feeling a part of their work team, the corporate team, the corporation sort of owning them in a way, and feeling their sense of belonging to their family, their home. The pet skews the balance towards the home. Now, in my concluding thoughts about holistic health for this year, I'm thinking that there are many bits and pieces to health and many modalities. And all of them are important, I suppose. I do want to pay respect to the piecemeal approach to healing and the multifarious modalities that are out there. But then I want to ask, is there one thing that's needed above everything else? Are there really many ways to health and many forms of sickness, or does it really simplify? Can we really simplify this whole area down? I would encourage people just to start wherever they're interested and to jump in. There is a connection, for example, between the gut microbiome, the microorganisms in our gut, and our health. And the researchers tell us that there are different profiles of organisms in our gut according to whether we're in good health or whether we're suffering from disease A, disease B, disease C. They've even discovered that if you take a bit of stool, a bit of poo from a healthy person and introduce it into the colon of a sick person, you're introducing the organisms that are part of a profile for health, and that makes a difference in the health of the sick patient because those organisms get to work and do their job. And when they do their job, they make metabolism better in the body, and they make nutrients more readily available because they are like a factory for converting our food to energy. So a big part of health is of course food. So some people will come in at that angle and they will explore the dimensions of a healthy diet, and the research seems to be pointing more and more towards a predominantly plant-based diet as being one that gives good health and longevity as well. And they would be looking at, nutrition, naturopathy, natural approaches to healing. We must also make our interconnections as we go along. If we're going to eat healthy, we're also going to have an effect on the environment and on the economy. So good eating goes hand in hand with good environmental practice and good promotion of good agricultural practice as well. That in part means that it's a good thing to source your food organic or something that has been grown local, something that has been grown in a more traditional way, which uses the microbiome in the soil and in decomposed organic matter as a fertilizer, as a boost to the next crop, instead of using artificial fertilizers and pesticides and so on. We know that they get into the food chain and they can lead to health problems. I'm encouraging a holistic view here, so it's worthwhile exploring the connection between the soils in which our food is grown and their microbiome or microorganism profile, because these microorganisms are responsible for releasing nutrients, minerals, trace elements in the soil, which then get incorporated into the crops grown. Seeing the connection between the soil microbiome and the human gut microbiome.
Are you talking about
which we know
parasites?
has dividends for health. When I talk microbiome, includes a whole spectrum of organisms, including bacteria, fungi, viruses, protozoa, anything that's like microscopic. There are not just millions or billions, but trillions of little lives that cohabit our organism. And if they are happy and doing their thing properly, then we experience good health as a dividend. There are good microorganisms and bad microorganisms. This is why people go for, probiotic diets, and you can be eating all the good food, but then if you are an antibiotic junkie, you'll find that antibiotics kill off all the organisms, so they're killing off the good and the bad. So your gut microbiome takes a big hit if you overuse antibiotics.
There's a massive paranoia in the medical area at the moment with antibiotics. They're too scared to prescribe them because of that.
Well, we know that the bugs develop resistance.
And they end up with a superbug.
Yes.
Not nice at all.
Like those strains of golden staph in hospitals.
Horrible.
And so people could go into hospitals for treatment and then they get an infection and die.
It's horrible.
Because this is the way that natural selection works in microorganism populations. They develop resistance to antibiotics. And remember, you're obliterating all that good gut flora. Gut flora is another name for it. And we need that for health. So there's a connection between how much we rely on allopathic medicine, and so much of allopathic medicine is drugs, and so much of that is antibiotical drugs that kill off the flora. And keeping this right and keeping our agriculture right, eliminating general toxins in the environment, like too many artificial fertilizers and pesticides, and doing the right thing by climate. It's all tied up, because if people as a whole, and more people I think are moving towards a predominantly plant-based diet. Some people describe themselves as pescatarian, some people describe themselves as, eating everything, but predominantly plants and a little bit of meat. Some people think of themselves as flexitarians, that they can vary the amounts of different inputs into their diet. But in traditional and village and peasant societies, the plant-based diet, for example, in the Mediterranean diet is a really good one that promotes health. And if you factor in as well the way the food is produced, it makes a difference. Because if you're raising a lot of beef on the planet, you're going to produce a lot more emissions and speed up global warming a lot more than if you didn't have to produce so much beef. You wouldn't have to clear the forests, for example, and graze a lot of cattle.
I think we eat too much red meat. I believe red meat's good for you in small amounts. I mean, once a month is enough, really, honestly, and you don't need to go beyond that.
Well,
it's better for the planet.
All I'm suggesting, if people have that thought, then they can do whatever they're capable of. They can do what suits them. They know that they may not be able to eliminate something altogether, but they can change the proportions of meat and fruit and veg in their diet. And then the way the food is grown in traditional communities, it actually builds up the village economy. But in these large scale, big ag industrial farming setups,
It's horrible.
it deranges the economy, and it puts a lot of people out of their normal employment, and it's not so easy to make a transition to something else.
And the abuse on the animal as well.
Well, I haven't even mentioned animal welfare, because we know that the way that a lot of beef farming is done abuses cows. The way they pump full of hormones and antibiotics, and holes are made in their side to do so, and then whenever you put animals in stalls, instead of allowing them to graze, to be free range, to eat grass, because cows were made to eat grass and not just to be force fed grains, which could go to feed poor people as well. You've got problems there, and you've got even ethical issues arising with animal abuse. They treat pigs appallingly, they treat poultry, chickens appallingly, in terms of how they concentrate them in those barns and pump them up, again with hormones and antibiotics, until they're so plump for the dining table, but they're overweight and their legs break underneath them.
That is
and
so sad.
Piling up, mobile and immobile birds, and just collapsing into their own feces and so on. If they don't give them the free range opportunity, it becomes inhumane.
Well, that's enough to make you want to stop eating chicken.
Well, this is interesting. There is a disconnect between the food on our plate and how that food is raised. And if we just give a thought sometimes, we buy things packeted from the supermarket, or we go to a takeaway and get fast food, and you're tucking into a burger, and how is that meat raised, and what's in that bun? Why doesn't it seem to get mouldy like normal bread? It seems to be like an eternal bread. In other words, make the connection between the food on your plate and how it's raised, because food is medicine.
I've noticed a taste difference in the food. It doesn't taste, well, especially meat. Mm-hmm. Meat does not taste the way it used to.
Mm. Food can be medicine, and by the simple practice of changing our eating habits and preparing food. Why would you prepare food? Well, because if you get fresh produce that's in season, ideally grown locally, so it's not being trucked in for long distances and it's not being refrigerated, you benefit the economy and the climate, and you put yourself in a situation where you have to prepare the food. So it's not processed food. And part of a huge part of the global health epidemic, especially in the United States, has come from eating too much processed food too much junk food. Mm-hmm. Especially foods containing corn syrup and that have just been processed to the point where all the nutrients are eliminated from the food. A food that's got fresh and prepared and eaten has a vitality about it that processed food doesn't have. So if you're buying all your food wrapped up in plastic and so on, there could be a problem there. So that's something to look at. There is no part of this spiritual program, if you like, on the Peacemakers channel that is disconnected from any other part. So the way to bring peace to the world, it does involve economic justice, does involve environmental healing, it does involve healing oneself, and that a lot of that has to do with our approach to food. Yes. So jump into healing through whatever modality appeals to you. It may be chiropractic. You may want to, instead of always going to the GP for a check, maybe have a complementary healthcare professional a visit every few months or so under a chiropractor or an osteopath or a homeopath or a whatever appeals to you, or a naturopath. There are a wonderful host of modalities out there. There's Reiki and there's Rolfing and there's Alexander technique and there's Bach flower remedies. There's everything you can imagine. There's acupuncture and Ayurvedic medicine and Chinese herbal medicine, and they all have some merit, but the merit will depend upon the wisdom of the practitioner and the experience of the practitioner.
And your level of happiness, I find, is probably the best medicine.
Yeah. So the level of happiness goes to the issue also of psychotherapy and psychosomatic medicine.
You can have poison and be in a good frame of mind and you'll be okay.
Yeah.
Not really, but you know what I'm trying to get at here. It's your frame of mind. You can eat beautifully and be in a bad frame of mind and come up with all kinds of diseases.
That's really important, because if you don't have a holistic approach, you can be like super impressive in a particular area and then the whole thing can just be unraveled by something missing in another area. Let's say you're like a super fit triathlete, and let's say, you know, your body, you train your body, you've got plenty of exercise, throw in good fresh air and sleep, and then something happens and you've got some cancer in your body.
That's right.
And then because you've been raised in a scientific background, you set a lot of store by what the medical scientists say, and they say, well, we have to treat your cancer with radiotherapy and chemotherapy. So, and then you start worrying, how long have I got to live? And you start stressing over that. And so all the good that you've done through your exercise and eating regime, it doesn't matter if you've got the best diet in the world, that can just bring you down like that.
Absolutely.
A fear-based approach at a critical moment could bring you down like that. So we have talked already about the problems of chronic stress.
I think stress is the basis to most of our diseases.
I think you're right, because stress underlies general inflammation. And more medicine is discovering that underlying most of our chronic diseases, including cancers and cardiovascular diseases and diabetes and all the things that have been killing people like crazy in the last century, could be underlaid by a kind of chronic rumbling inflammation. And I'm not talking about an inflammation at an injury point. If you injure your elbow or your knee or whatever, there's going to be an inflammatory response, which is the body's natural response. Yeah. But what if you've got this inflammation throughout the body, just a general cellular inflammation? It's going to interfere with all the metabolic pathways.
That's right.
And it can be the case that it can affect the nerves and the blood vessels. Some clinicians think, for example, that with hardening of the arteries or arteriosclerosis and atherosclerosis, the laying of fat down in the arteries, which can precede heart attacks, because if, say, the coronary artery gets occluded, that can lead to a heart attack or a myocardial infarction. So some clinicians have suggested that it's the inflammation in the blood vessel that actually precedes the deposit of fat in the blood vessel, which then precedes the occlusion of the blood vessel, which then leads to the heart failing or the heart infarcting, part of the heart muscle dying.
And have you noticed that these diseases have become more chronic of late?
Yes, they've
They
been
weren't
generalised.
such an issue before.
No, there is just, it's off the Richter scale just how much they've galloped and grown in leaps and bounds in my lifetime, in your lifetime. It was rare to find people with, peanut allergies.
Exactly. You had a
and
peanut
all
allergy.
the spectrum of allergies and
now they all have them.
anaphylactic predisposition, as well as diabetes,
Oh,
as well as kids with
unbelievable.
autism, ADHD, and behavioural disorders.
Something's going on.
Yes, I mean the genetics, the DNA hasn't changed considerably, so there's something in the environment. Yeah,
There is.
and
There is.
the food industry, the processed food industry, and big ag industrial farming has a lot to answer for.
They contribute towards it.
But also the poisons that we put into our body, and the injections and the vaccines and the so on, they can, the antibiotic, being dependent upon pharmaceuticals and antibiotics does really predispose one. They're part of the suite of environmental toxins, really, that are contributing to these chronic diseases. So,
So money is obsessed.
that's right, because people have different incentives, and the medical system is largely powered by the pharmaceutical industry, and
That's right.
if profits are put before people, we just do not get the right outcomes, and this is widely known. But what you were saying about inflammation, even underlying inflammation, is something that is not taking place properly in our psyche, because it's all psychosomatic. What the psyche does, it affects the soma, the physical body. And our bodies are geared to produce a flight or fight response, we know, because of evolutionary history. If you meet a saber-toothed tiger in the wild, or some predator that can harm you, the adrenaline has to fire up the whole system, the sympathetic nervous system. You need to be ready to run, to do battle, to hide. All of the blood flow and energy has to go to your periphery. And this is meant to be, even your pupils dilate, because you need to be able to see the threats more clearly in your environment. This is all well and good, but it was a response to an environmental threat that was meant to be strictly temporary. So when you're past being taken by that saber-toothed tiger, or crushed by the bear, or whatever the threat is, the system is meant to calm itself down, because you need energy to regenerate, to grow and repair tissue, and that comes through the parasympathetic system, not through the sympathetic system. And the body has to shift gears. But what's happened to us modern people is that we are reacting to everyday stimuli as though we are facing a saber-toothed tiger. Somebody doesn't like you at work, and it becomes a really big stressor on your system.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
You are secreting too much adrenaline, and your chemical profile is like somebody running away from a threat or about to fight all the time, and then you don't know how to wind the system down, and it just stays like that. And that chronic state of stress leads to inflammation, and it leads to a derangement of the immune system.
Absolutely, because we're living in a situation where we feel threatened all the time. Life has become harder. more challenging.
Mm-hmm. And as we said before, this is because we are so responsive to the energies that move under the diaphragm. And under the diaphragm is all of our fear motivation. The hormones that mediate fear, the fight or flight, or freeze or fawn response in the adrenal cortex, and the hormones that mediate the sexual response too, and also our quest for power and our grab for energy and so on, all there. And this part of our body is burdened, and we don't know how to transmute it, sublimate energy and bring it through to the higher etheric centers. Because more and more we are discovering that there is a mediation between energy, which fills the universe as living information, and the physical. And if we can tap into that field of energy, we can replenish ourselves so that we don't have to go like hungry scavengers looking for people to plunder energy off, because it's not a healing strategy. And also we can bring energies through that will change the chemical and hormonal profile of our body. Researchers have found that people can go into meditation clinics, and after 7 days their blood chemistry is different. You know, their gut
to do that.
their gut microbiome is different. Their ability to deal with cancer cells has been enhanced. Even breastfeeding mothers, the nutrient content of their milk is enhanced. And this hasn't come from ingesting anything. It has come from learning what we talked about, that non-polarizing, heart-centered love energy, that then in turn affecting the frontal cortex and changing the brainwave patterns from beta to alpha and theta and the deeper patterns. And then the brain waves coming into coherence and linking up to a larger energetic field. And that does shift your happiness level.
Oh, it does.
You know, it may be mediated by increased levels of serotonin and dopamine and so on, but these levels are known to change in the bloodstream depending on your state of mind. Your body makes your own opiates. It does.
If it heightens your energy, it puts you in a different state of mind.
It heightens your energy, exactly. So we are saying, just in summary here, we're saying that the healing field seems to be broken up into many parts, and it's all right to jump in anywhere. It's certainly advisable. It's better than not taking an interest in your healing. But then look for the interconnections between that area of healing and other areas of healing, and look for the interconnections between healing and your spirituality and the economy and peacemaking and the environment, because it's all interconnected. It's all interconnected. Now, in the next transmission, we will ask the question, what is the most fundamental thing of all?